My name is Carol Levy. I'm the director of the Mount Sinai Diabetes Center, and I also play a key role in diabetes clinical research here at Mount Sinai.
Hi, my name is David Lamb. I'm an endocrinologist, and I'm also the medical director for the Clinical Diabetes Institute for the Mount Sinai Health System.
Yeah, so over the last now year, patients have often reached out to us in our practice asking a question related to what happens if I get COVID-19. What should I do? How should I manage this? And I think that there's, over time, the answer to this question has changed a bit for all of us as practitioners in terms of providing care. But the first and foremost is obviously to take care of yourself, provide yourself supportive care, make sure that you're breathing okay, make sure that you're feeling well, you're not having any severe distress. For someone with diabetes, it would be important to check your blood sugars, make sure they're not very high or very low, because sometimes blood sugars can shift when people become sick. Over time and more recently, I think another consideration that has come up is because people, and we'll get into this in a bit more detail, with diabetes are potentially in a higher risk group to have less optimal outcomes. That doesn't mean every person with diabetes has less optimal outcomes, but people can, based on what we know at this point, that there might be consideration to contact your primary care provider to ask about whether you'd be eligible for some type of one of these new immunologic therapy treatments that may actually to help reduce the disease burden and improve a clinical course for a patient if they were to get sicker or not be doing well. David, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you addressed a lot of the very good key points, Carol. I think that anytime anyone is diagnosed with a COVID-19 infection, it's pretty overwhelming. You're worried about yourself, you're worried about your family members, you're worried about people you may have worked with and been in contact, and all those other implications. And I think the first thing is, just like you said, Carol, you focus in on your own health first, and you make sure that you're sort of checking off all those boxes. I'd say definitely, even if maybe nothing actually is going to change drastically, touching base with your primary care doctor.
I agree.
To your point about, asking if you're eligible for certain early interventional therapies, checking in with your diabetes doctor, just even if they're, should I still be taking all the medicines the way I've been taking them? What should I look out for? Any sort of, any pearls, from now that we've been in it for almost a year, from your endocrinologist perspective, what should be looked out for? I think just kind of communication is key to help anyone through this, like a really stressful experience too.
Yeah, no, and I think that something that we've done with many of our patients is proactively, before they get sick, is sort of go through with them sort of what would the care plan be if something were to occur or come up that could be problematic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it's similar to the first question, right? What should I do if I get COVID-19? But I think if we could think about it more specifically, let's say in the context of someone who's living with diabetes, right. What happens if I get it? We've seen, and Carol and myself were, since March of 2020, we were talking to patients both in the outpatient environment as well as looking at taking care of patients on the inpatient, and seeing the myriad of effects that COVID-19 infection can have just on diabetes and on glucose levels. So oftentimes, patients may have, a complete loss of sense of taste and smell, they stop eating. And so the inclination may be, well, maybe I should be monitoring for more low blood sugars because I'm not eating as much. But you also, as many people living with diabetes can attest to, when you're sick, your blood sugars, even if you're not eating, paradoxically will rise. And so blood sugars can do both in the setting of a COVID-19 infection. And I think, Carol mentioned this, the importance is to monitor, if testing your blood sugars more regularly, especially if you're taking insulin as part of your therapy. And then ultimately, if you end up getting hospitalized, if it comes to that point, making sure that, to Carol's point again, having that care plan, knowing your medications, and being able to tell your hospital care team I take these 3 medications for my diabetes, communicating that with them, making sure that they're aware, and then making sure that they're also, in addition to treating you for the COVID-19 infection, monitoring your blood sugars and managing them well. We know that blood sugar control during any hospitalization, but particularly also COVID-19 infections is very important. Carol, do you have anything to?
Yeah, no, and I want to reiterate everything that David said there. And just to make a point, it's always best to have that medication list ready, to be prepared to answer questions, because people, when they're quite ill, they will come to the closest hospital. And this I can say from our perspective, somebody will come to our hospital having been cared for wonderfully somewhere else, but we don't have access to that information. So having the ability, because the person who's sick may not be able to share every detail of when they took their last dose of pills or insulin, when this happened, what medications they've been on most recently, what are all their recent doses, and what has been happening. All those pieces make it easier for us to provide optimal care. And additionally, depending on what one's treatment regimen is, whether if you're somebody who's utilizing diabetes-related technology, make sure that you bring all of that with you so that the team will be aware. Never just say, okay, well, I'm sick, I'm on an insulin pump. They're not going to want the pump in the hospital. I'm going to take it off. That's not the way to go. You always show up with your treatment and then let the team that's managing you provide you care in the way that fits with what your prior treatment regimen is. So that's a great question, and patients ask me that a lot, and it really depends upon the age range of people in terms of what we know about potential risks, and then also other health issues that can be related. And the thing that I also say to everyone is that this disease, sadly, doesn't follow all the rules. And we know that, meaning that a young, healthy person, someone who's 25 years old with diabetes, gets COVID-19, there is never a guarantee at this point that that person will have a perfectly, easy clinical course, a few sniffles, and be all better. You can't predict it. We've had some patients who are much older that we would normally be more worried about who breeze through it with no problems, and other younger patients who've gotten quite ill. So should you be worried? Well, I hate to say the word worry, but you should be cautious is what I would like to say. Everyone should just be really careful to ensure that they're maximizing the likelihood that they are not going to get COVID-19, or to protect themselves from any high-risk situations where they could be at risk for it. David, do you have anything else you want to put in there that I'm forgetting? Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that I think you summed it up really well there. And one of the biggest frustrations I think both patients as well as medical providers have had throughout the pandemic is there's so much that's not known. And just like you were saying, you don't know if you're going to be the person that just loses their sense of smell and taste, and that's it. Or you don't know if you're going to be that person that winds up in the hospital. And so I think, to your point, taking every precaution possible to avoid infection, and is paramount. And that's what we try to stress to all our patients.
Yeah. And that's what we do as clinicians as well, is one needs to be cautious.
Yeah. That's an easy one. Yeah. The answer is yes. And I know that look, I see a lot of patients. I know Carol does too. We've had this discussion with lots of our patients, and we've heard a lot of reasons why people are a little nervous about getting the vaccine. The first thing I tell people is, I got the vaccine, my parents got the vaccine, my wife's not eligible yet, but once she becomes eligible, she's getting the vaccine. I think that to Carol's point, we just saw the devastation that a COVID-19 infection can do. And anything that we can do to prevent the infection, or even just prevent severe disease, is worth it. We just want the best for our patients. And we know that people living with diabetes, it raises the increased risk for severe disease. And I think that, when the first few were coming out and we saw statistics, and, people would say, well, I don't know, it's not 94, it's not 100% effective. Take the 94%,
Right.
It's better than 0%. And even, people are worried about side effects of the vaccine. Well, I hear that you have a low-grade fever, maybe some aches after the vaccine. Taking those 48 hours of not feeling the greatest compared to winding up in the hospital on a ventilator, if that could be the difference, I think it's well worth it. And there's a lot of, and each reason that people are anxious about the vaccine, a little bit suspect about the vaccine, we're not just brushing them aside. But I think that there's a lot of good reasons to have the vaccine, and you got to talk to your doctor about it. You reach out to your primary care doctor, your diabetes doctor, anyone, and ask them so that they can personalize their advice to you too. Carol, any?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I sometimes get questions from patients as well who have already had COVID-19. Well, shouldn't I just get one vaccine? Do I really need two? We are not the experts in the areas, but what we can say is the CDC, which is, obviously an organization that we all follow the guidelines for, is recommending that if it's a 2-vaccine treatment option, one should take both vaccines, not just say, well, I'm going to take one. The second point, just to consider with all of this is that, once again, as David said, even if you get a bit sick from the vaccine, it is so much better than the potential risk of what one could have with COVID-19. And there isn't a good way to predict what someone's response is going to be the vaccine. With even our division, different people had different levels of symptoms after the vaccine, but you can be rest assured that 2 days of feeling crummy is a lot better than taking that chance that you may get a lot worse. And even if someone has had COVID-19, we have seen cases of people getting it a second time. So just having had it once doesn't mean you're clear and you don't need to take the vaccine. We really want to build immunity to protect everybody. So the answer is that this one is probably the easiest question that we could possibly answer, is you take whatever you can get, and they all work pretty darn well. People start to look at numbers, percentages, 94, 95, this one is lower, but this one was evaluated when there's more disease strains out there. Any vaccine you get is going to provide you protection. There isn't, patients ask me all the time, you get the one that's available to you and you take it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And all of these vaccines, the ones that are currently available in the US, they've gone through clinical trials with many, many patients. And in addition, now we've got, close to 3 months, maybe a little bit more than that, of just real world experience with that as well. So they've been used in a lot of people living in America, as well as globally, of course. But I think that I agree with Carol. You take what you can get. Sadly, there's not enough, and those numbers seem to be improving. But if you're able to get it, you should get it. Yeah, there's no, not that I'm aware of, at least in terms of any published literature showing that people living with diabetes get sicker after the vaccine. And certainly in my clinical practice, I have not seen that. I would say that there are potentials for impact very short term on glucose levels. The intention of the vaccine is to kind of provoke your immune system. And when it does that, a lot of other chemicals and hormones in the body are triggered as a part of your immune response that can also affect your body's response to insulin, whether it's your own insulin or the insulin that you're injecting. And so some people find that maybe for 2 days, maybe even less, they have slightly higher blood sugars. I've actually had a couple patients that have told me that they've had slightly lower blood sugars. So, going back to what we said about the importance is monitoring, regular monitoring, keeping track, especially, if you're on medications that could cause low blood sugars, or you want to just kind of stay on top of that. And it's in 100% of my patients, it's short-lived, any of those effects on their blood sugar.
Yeah, and I agree with David, and I would say that we're in some ways lucky in that as endocrinologists, we have a lot of experience with patients of ours getting vaccines early, because people with diabetes are in a higher risk group. So we've taken care of a lot of people and seen it. It is rare that I can't even think of one patient that has had significant blood sugar issues that has created a problem for them. People have really done fine. And as David said, I think it's more not per se the vaccine that's causing the problem with the blood sugars. It's more that the body's sort of stress response. You make some adrenaline, you make a little bit of stress hormones. Vaccine hurts your arm, you feel a little uncomfortable. It's like someone with diabetes does public speaking, their blood sugar goes up sometimes. These are just sort of some of the things that people think about. It's more of just a standard stress response when people get better from it. It shouldn't precipitate anything worse.
Yeah. I remember one question I received from a patient, because some people who are living with diabetes will actually wear some of their technology around their arms.
Good point. Yeah.
And one question someone asked me was, will it be okay to get the injection, the immunization in the same arm that I happen to be wearing my sensor? The overall, where they're injecting the vaccine is usually not in the place where you're actually wearing your sensor or even your insulin infusion set, because they're injecting into the muscle. So in all cases, it's fine. Really, the only thing I think to think about, which I think I shared with the patient too, was if your arm is sore, your flexibility and maneuvering, if you're using that as well for your diabetes therapy, but it shouldn't affect the ability for you or the accuracy or the
Exactly.
the quality of the delivery of medication.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, these vaccines were administered in clinical trials to people with diabetes. So a lot of this has already been evaluated. And now, as David said, we have a much more big real world experience on it. And there just have not been any, to date for sure, noted reports of any challenges.
Okay, that was a pretty informative video. We are, as a ministry, a little bit behind addressing diabetes and COVID-19, but I hope there was some questions in there and you got some answers for those diabetics that had questions about whether or not they should or shouldn't get the vaccine. Okay, now it's been a year, almost a year, since we did our first broadcast. And our first broadcast, which I think is the one that was the most watched, was about COVID 19. Because during that
Mm-hmm.
time, it was a time when folks were trying to decide whether they should get the vaccination or not. They were trying to gather information. Our Dr. Don was one of the panelists on that very first broadcast. I want y'all to remember, now I'm backing up here. Remember that this is a tabletop discussion. I want everybody to get involved with your questions, your comments, your statements, your testimonies, whatever you have. So we're going to start with Dr. Dawn, and I'm going to ask her, it's been a year, so what's going on with COVID?
Well, it's been a year, and praise God, we all are still here. So
Amen.
we thank God for that. Yeah, it was in January, and that we had our first one, so it's almost been a year. Um, Happy to say that I think America right now is at about 60% vaccinated for the whole country. Um, Ohio is a little below that. We're in the 50s. Franklin County is in the 60s. Delaware County is in the 80s. And then most of the other counties around Licking and Fairfield, they're lower than Franklin County. So we have a lot of work to go. What I would say is we've had three big peaks. We had a peak at the beginning in March to April of 2020. And then we kind of went down and everything opened back up in the summer. And then the fall hit and we had a big spike. And through the winter, it went really high and then it went down in 2021, like spring. And then Delta hit. And the Delta variant is much more infective and has what they call a higher viral load. So, for example, if someone sneezed on you and say 10 droplets hit your face. Each of those droplets, and this is totally hypothetical, might have 10 COVID viruses in it. That's with the original SARS coronavirus 2. With the Delta variant, which is still SARS but has genetic mutations in it, every time someone sneezes on you, you might 100 or 1,000 viruses per droplet. So that's one of the reasons why Delta is so much more severe. The blessing with Delta was that by the time Delta hit, people had been getting the Pfizer, the Moderna, or the Johnson and Johnson vaccines. And although there were breakthrough infections, if you had been vaccinated, Delta did not kill you or most likely did not put you in the hospital. It was like a 1 to 2% of the people that had been vaccinated and did get Delta. Only about 1 to 2% ended up in the hospital, and like 99.9% of them, no one died from it, didn't die. So what that's telling us is that the vaccines work. And so my message to everybody now that we have a new variant called Omicron, we don't know how virulent or how strong or how dangerous Omicron is yet. But it has many more mutations, and the mutations are similar to Delta in that same region of the spike protein, little spikes that stick off that you see in those pictures. Those little spikes are what stick to your cells in your nose and in your lungs. And there are many mutations, and those mutations may cause the vaccine to be less effective, still effective, or still better than not being vaccinated. So the president today said, hey, if you already been vaccinated, please get the booster. If you have not been vaccinated, please get vaccinated, because that's the one thing that we can say will prevent you from major illness or from death. So I will stop there. I said enough, but anyway.
Well, that's good. That's good. Um, I was thinking the other day about COVID and about all the folks who have probably still trying to make up their minds as to whether or not they want to get the vaccination. And I thought to myself, you know what? If you haven't gotten it by now, you're probably not gonna get it. But then I had a light bulb moment, and what that is um, you know how long the flu shot's been out here, right? Flu shot's been here for a long time. So I was one of those people who decided that I didn't need a flu shot, and I had dug my heels in, and I wasn't going to get a flu shot. I just, I don't need a flu shot. I'm healthy. But then I met this person that I made a mistake of saying that I didn't want a flu shot. That's why I changed my mind about these folks who are trying to make up their minds, and they're not going to ever change their minds, because I told this person that I'd never had a flu shot, and that person was always in my ear every time I saw her because I'd never had a flu shot. But I got more information about that flu shot, and I got my first flu shot last year. So I guess you can change your mind and decide, you know what? I need to go and get this COVID vaccine, just not for me, but, for those that are around me. And then I also thought, now I'm talking. Then I also thought these folks are having to decide whether or not they should get vaccinated. Now they've got to make that decision for their 5 to 11-year-old.
Mm,
So,
mm,
what do you say to a parent? I don't know. What do you say to a parent that has to decide, should I let my 5-year-old get this vaccination? I know that the CDC recommends it, that these 5-year-old,
mm-hmm.
5 to 11, their vaccination. Any comment on that, ladies?
my comment where it's not necessarily scientific, but I try to look at things in a practical standpoint. And for that, I say we've gotten for your 5-year-old, when your children were newborns, we all had required vaccines that they had to get.
Mm.
And we didn't question, many people, I will say, many people didn't question it. It was just, I need to get my child vaccinated to protect them from
Mm-hmm.
X, whatever X was. And I personally look at this COVID the same way. It's getting your child this vaccine to protect them from X. I know a lot of people have said, well, but the side effects, I don't know what they're going to be. And quiet as is kept, if you look back at many of the documents when you took your infant, your newborn, when you took them to the pediatrician and they received a vaccination, if you read some of those side effects of the vaccines that they were receiving,
Mm-hmm.
you'll find that it mirrors what COVID says. Yes, you will have maybe
Mm-hmm.
some aches and some pains. You may have a fever. And it just tells you, if those things do happen, as long as they're not severe, take a
Mm-hmm.
couple Tylenol, get some rest. It's the same thing. And I think in today's age, because COVID is new, it's new. I think we're going through a part of history. This is a time we're making history. Back in the day, our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents went through something. There was some new disease process that was going on. So they kind of experienced it probably as well. But again, I look at it as then and now we had to get our children vaccinated for certain
Mm-hmm.
disease processes to protect them and to protect others. I
Mm-hmm.
don't look at this as any different. Yes, we don't know everything about it, but what we do know is just like those other vaccines, if you receive the vaccination, it helps. It prevents a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It prevents a lot. And particularly with COVID, it'll help prevent you from potentially being in the hospital for a long period of time on a ventilator. And even bigger than that, from being in a box 6 feet under, to be quite honest.
Well,
Um, my
that was good,
grandson is
Tamika.
6 and he has an autoimmune disease. And
Mm.
the uh, doctors at Children's Hospital suggested that he get the vaccination. And he did. And he was quite the little trooper. He called me up and he said, Grandma, I had to, he's only in kindergarten, so he's not pronouncing all this stuff quite right. And he's trying to tell me that he just got his shot, and I'm not understanding what he's talking about. So his mom had to get on the phone and say, he just got his COVID shot. I'm like, oh my God, put him back on the phone. He's like, Grandma, it didn't even hurt. So, he's had 6 years old. He just turned 6 years old. And he's had his shot. So I don't know. I guess
Yeah,
this is a big decision to make. But what I was
it
telling
is.
Tamika earlier, just like she just said, um, I never even questioned. It's a new day though from the time when I was taking my children to get vaccinations and all that kind of stuff. I never even questioned, what they were giving him. They would say, oh, he's getting a booster, he's getting a diphtheria, he's getting whatever he got, and he got it.
Mhm.
And we talk about this
Mm-hmm.
booster. I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but I'm gonna say it. Back at that time when they were like, take your kid to the hospital to the doctor and so they can get their booster. They can't go to school without a booster. Well, since I never questioned that, I just thought the booster was another shot you got in your rump. That's what your grandmother would say. It was just another shot that you got in your behind. I never thought it was
It's the
anything
same
that booster
thing.
you got.
Same thing.
Right?
So I don't know. I think that it's a decision that parents have to make. And I never even, like I said, I never even questioned it. You just took them to the doctor and they got their shots. But I guess that's a decision that a parent has to make for their child. Um, I want to ask you about the flu shot and the COVID vaccine. Can you get them both?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
Yep.
You can actually get them both at the same time.
Okay.
I
And
did.
what I say to that is, you know what, if you choose to do that, awesome. Make sure, just on the be on the safe side. If you think about, oh, what are going to be, am I going to get a double whammy of side effects? Just take your Motrin or your Tylenol or whatever that may be and rest. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to get a double whammy. You might get something. You might not feel well. It just, each of us is different. I can say personally for me, I didn't get my flu vaccine and my booster at the same time, only because of the way that I had already scheduled. I didn't even think of it that way. I didn't even think of it at the
Mm-hmm.
time. But if I could have, would I? I think I would have. The blessing in
Mm-hmm.
both of those things, me getting both of those, I truly did not have any side effect. I didn't have any side effects. Yes, my arm was a little bit sore, but other than that, I didn't have any issues, which was a true blessing because I had the Moderna. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a I will share, I did have the Moderna vaccine as well as the Moderna booster, and I didn't have any
Mm-hmm.
issues. And actually, I encourage my family, and I will tell you this: my son and my daughter are young adults, and initially they kept questioning, "Well, why am I going to get that, Ma? And why do I need that?" And it was like, well, you know what? Get it to protect me. You don't get for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Just protect me.
That's right.
and
Mm-hmm.
actually, and even your friends around, they still have grandparents and who have some who are immunocompromised. And so if you want to be around them, do it for them as well. So I will say my kids and my entire family has done the flu and the booster, and we're all
Mm-hmm.
good. So I encourage it.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly, I strongly encourage it. Working in the hospital every day. And I think, many people are afraid of COVID and the vaccination, but until you've actually seen what the effects it has on someone up close and personal, maybe
Mm.
yeah, it is scary. But for those of us who see people dying every day, and I'm talking truly young people at this point, when you see people come into the hospital and say, "Oh my gosh, I wish I would have." Well, by then it's sometimes
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, unfortunately, truly unfortunately, it's too late because some of them didn't make it out of the hospital. Um,
Amen.
and for those that do, I mean, I know, and Dawn, you've probably seen it on the OSU website. There was a story about a young man. He was, I believe, 28 years old. Didn't believe in the COVID vaccine. Wouldn't get it. Ended up having to have lung transplant. Was out for two and a
Mm-hmm.
half months. Didn't know what happened to him. Fortunately, today this young man is up and walking now. But again, his message is to, of course, to others. At this point, if you haven't, use him as a testimony that it's worth getting because you don't want to go through what he went through. And again, he's 28,
Mm-hmm.
28 years old, healthy young man.
I was going to
Um,
say I got. Sorry.
no, go
I
ahead.
was going to say I got the flu shot, the shingle shot, and the pneumonia vaccine. Most people don't even realize there is a vaccine for pneumonia that you usually cannot get until you're over 60. But like Sister Forney's grandson, I have an autoimmune disease. And so they made me start getting it this year. And I got all three of those on the same day, had no side effects from any of them. I got the booster the next week, and I had Pfizer as well as the Pfizer booster. And just as Tamika said, both my arms were swollen. Um, and that's it. That's it. So, as far as the kids are concerned, what I would tell parents were, your kids, how they have reacted to the other vaccines that they had to take. For example, the MMR, which is the measles, mumps, and rubella, or DPT, which is the diphtheria
Mm-hmm.
and tetanus, and all of those.
Mm-hmm.
If most kids don't like needles, that, but this is just one needle. And if they didn't react bad to those, they probably won't to this. They make you stay there when you get any of these vaccines for 15 to 20 minutes to see if you have allergic
I do.
reactions. If
I
you
do.
do have allergic reactions, And the reactions are not to the vaccine, it's to the solutions that the vaccines are in. They have EpiPens and things right there to treat you. And as a matter of fact, I think Sister Melanie, Reverend Mayo, Mike's wife, had an allergic reaction when she took her first COVID. But because she stayed right there, everything came out okay. And she didn't want to get the vaccine initially, but then she testified about how happy she was that she did. So I understand people's reservations, and a lot of people said, "Well, I'm gonna get my kids, but I want to wait and see what happens to the first couple of kids that get it." And I think I read on the CDC site today that like 64 million kids have gotten the vaccines and nobody has had an adverse reaction. So that 5 to 11. So that's a good sign when you got kids all over the country and you haven't had adverse reactions. So I understand people's hesitancy, but as Sister Tamika just said, when you get a vaccine, you're not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting others. And that Delta variant hit people in the 30s and 40-year-old range harder than it did people over 60. So nobody is with this virus. Children have been the least affected, but if children get it, they get really, really sick really, really fast. And you can just go to children's and they will tell you. So, pray about it, talk to your pediatrician about it, um, read about it. You can go to the CDC website, you can go to the NIH website. You can just put NIH CDC and then put children's vaccine. It explains it simple language so you understand what's going on.
Someone mentioned earlier across the bottom of the screen, I saw that she hopes she doesn't get uh, COVID. I think she said again. I'm not sure. Maybe she put it
Mm,
up there again.
mm.
But back to those folks that have been vaccinated. There. Oh no, I pray I don't get it again.
Don't get it again.
Oh, wow.
For the
Wow.
folks who have been vaccinated, it's not 100%. All right. I have a family member that has been vaccinated, and he just got out of quarantine because he caught COVID. But then he had some daughters, other people in his family that had not been vaccinated, his young adult daughters who decided they weren't going to get it, they also caught it. They all caught it from one daughter. But now my family member is 53 years old, and all he had was the sniffles. But those two who had not been vaccinated was very, very sick, and they were 23, 24-year-old young ladies. So, you still may get it if you get the vaccine, but it's not going to send you to the hospital. It's just going to make
Mm-hmm.
you be in for 10 days. You're not going to maybe get just the sniffles, as opposed to having
Mm-hmm.
not been able to taste and smell and be sick that way. So I don't know. Just you need to get the vaccine so you can be safe. So you can stay out of the hospital, so you don't leave this world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And plus,
Mm-hmm.
getting a vaccine, ultimately you want to start moving again. You want to start getting out again and being able to,
Right,
just enjoy, enjoy,
right.
Mm,
enjoy.
mm,
Hug your friends, hug your families, and not be afraid to do so. It just, I don't know. We've worn masks now for what, since March of 2020. Seems like
mhm,
we've been in masks for a year and a half, going on 2 years now. So, ultimately
mhm,
you want to get out of that, and but again, I get it. It's a personal choice and a preference. There's some people who may be comfortable being only around one or two people wearing a mask all day, but ultimately, I think many Americans, many folks want to get out and enjoy. And if you protect yourself, getting the vaccine protects yourself, but it also protects others and allows us to move a little bit more freely, I think.
I know that
mhm,
having to wear the mask at church, I love going to
mm,
church, sitting there, mask on. Dr. Weiss even spoke about, I think it was a Bible study, being able to fellowship, with your congregation. Well, we can't do that. I mean, we want to do that again, right? I want to fellowship.
Mhm.
You're not going to do that as long as people aren't getting vaccinated. We don't know who's vaccinated. You
Right.
got to sit in church with your mask on. I don't want to do that forever. I want to hug Dawn.
Right. Right. Right.
I don't want to do that forever. I want to, I'm sick of bumping. I just want to be able to come to church and fellowship. We haven't done, I miss that.
Oh,
And we
oh
just
my
need
God.
folks to get vaccinated, get your vaccination so we can protect each other, so we can start fellowshipping again, so we can just start. We're probably never going to go back to the way that it was before. I should never say never because never thought I was going to get a flu shot, but I did.
But
So we should.
Well, and I think the reality is just like the flu, just like SARS, just like so many of these other new disease processes that have come about, they don't go away. I mean, things get better as science, as we learn more about them. We learn different modalities, ways to treat, ways to function. Um,
mhm.
so, is COVID going to ever go away? Absolutely not. I mean, if you're realistic with it, absolutely not. Has the flu gone away? Nope. Has pneumonia gone away? Absolutely not. It's just how do we live with it? How do we live with it effectively and be able to have a nice, normal, healthy, um, happy, happy life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the choir wants to sing again. The praise team wants to sing without
That's
mask
right.
on. Oh my God, you think
That's right.
breathing is hard? Try singing with the mask on. It
Right.
is
Right.
insane. So, those
Right.
normal things. But one thing that we should think about is the more people that aren't vaccinated, the more mutations
Going
will
on.
build up. That's
Yep.
the nature of viruses. And so if 80% of the population had been vaccinated by last summer, we probably wouldn't see Omicron.
Mm.
That's how you
That's how
stop
they.
the viruses from being maintained in the population. And while vaccines are not, they're preventative because they help your immune system fight off the virus. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you have other comorbidities, other diseases, other conditions that weaken your immune system, then you're at high risk.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your lifestyle is such, like diabetic, and you don't take good care of yourself in general, you're at higher risk. So yes, you can get the virus after having the vaccine, but you will not have it as a severe um, form. And I know several people, as well as family members, both old and young, that have been reinfected with Delta, but they've all had either no symptoms or mild symptoms. And they found out because they knew they were exposed to someone else. So
Mm.
we don't know what's going to happen with Omicron, but yesterday it was one person. We know it's thousands already in the United States. Then it was another one in New York. 5-10 minutes ago, they said at least 7 more people have tested positive for Omicron.
Wow.
So it's here.
Wow.
It's here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And one of the things, we still have to be vigilant with our practices. So, yes, we still have to wear masks, but in addition to that, and I noticed that somebody said I think they said maybe they're going to continue to put their gloves back on. I didn't know if that meant wear the gloves technically, or just be more vigilant with what you're doing. But making sure that you wear your mask, making sure you wash your hands. That's just basic 101. Wash your hands because, you don't think about for all the places we go, the things we touch. If there's somebody who wasn't vaccinated, and unfortunately, people are kind of nasty. They may rub their nose or do something and then touch maybe the shopping cart or the doorknob. You're not thinking about it because your hands are clean. You touch that cart and then you go like this or go like this, and guess what? You have it. So before you do those things, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. And one day I did, and I'll say this. I was talking to my aunt and she says, I wear gloves everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. And I said, you know what? That's very interesting. I said, I'm not sure how effective that is. I said, why don't you do me a favor? I said, take a test one day. I said, put on some gloves before you, let's say, go to the grocery store. Put a marker on your glove. Wear your glove and see how many times with you having that glove on, what you touched, you still have that glove on, and that mark that was on your glove is now on something else. You've paid, you've gotten into your car, you've touched everything, and that glove's still there. So you've gathered all kinds of stuff actually on your gloves.
Yeah.
And then what? So
not a good idea to wear those gloves.
Interesting, just very interesting. So you have to, if you're gonna wear gloves, I say change them real often. Real often.
Real
So
often. Real often. Don't wear the gloves. Take your hand sanitizer, like me, spray down your own car.
Yes.
Wash your hands. Do it a couple of times in the grocery store. When you get in the car, spray your steering wheel before you put your hands all over.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
COVID lives a good little while on hard surfaces, like Tamika was talking about, that cart. It doesn't live very long on soft surfaces like clothes or plush furniture, and they've done the research on that, and so it's harder surfaces, and it doesn't live a long time, and it's not really living. It's just sitting there, and so yeah, disinfecting is something we need to get used to.
And I know that
table talk, and we probably should have been used to it, but that's just my little snippet.
Oh my God. What about
masks? What about the use and reuse of masks?
Oh no. Tamika, what do you say? You in the hospital.
You said reusing masks? Was that the question? I think it depends on the type. I think it really depends on the type. Now, the medical masks that you see, the blue ones and the black ones, those are meant to be disposed of. Those are not for multi-use. There are some nice cloth ones that are double, but you have to wash them. And I have a filter. I actually have the disposable filters. So if I have the double mask where you can put the filter inside of it, and I can wash it, but I put my filter in. Of course, I throw my filters away after a couple uses, but there are some masks that are meant to be disposed of. The cutesy tootsie masks aren't very protective. They're pretty. They're really pretty. And the way that I always tell folks, you can test it is, when you put your mask on, just kind of blow through. And if you have, I don't know, a candle or something, if you can kind of blow that candle out through your mask, I wouldn't reuse it because it's not protecting you from anything.
Yeah, and those surgical masks, once they're wet, you're not supposed to use them again. So I see people, because I fussed at my family, wearing that same surgical mask over and over again. I was like, boo, no. Viruses are smaller, about 100,000 times smaller than a bacteria, and you can't see a bacteria, so they can get through. And so that was an excellent test that Tamika just talked about, that blowing through. The cute masks, if they're real cute, you should put a surgical one on and then put the cute one on top of it, and then
that'll give you some
you'll be protected. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I wash those. I wash masks a couple of times a week, and use the surgical ones, but
yeah.
That me?
Oh,
no,
we haven't had. Go ahead. No, is that you making noise? We haven't had much interaction with our little table talk. But, maybe I'm hoping that folks are taking in some of the things we've talked about here today. I hope those folks who have dug their heels in and decided, I am not getting vaccinated, will get some little angel that'll talk in their ear, the way I had an angel talking in my ear about the flu shot. I did get my COVID vaccine, but then I was at first like those folks that say, oh, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to get at the back of the line. I'm going to see what happens to everybody else. But then after that first session, although before that first session that we did in January, I had already had a little angel talking in my ear. So I,
Now you had Dawn
I,
beating you up on your head.
I, I know. I, so I went and I got my vaccination in February. I got my second in March. I haven't got the booster yet, but I'm going to schedule that real soon. I've been,
It's really easy.
I'm not,
It's very
I'm,
It
easy. I
I'm
is.
can
not,
tell you, I did mine at Kroger through the Kroger app. It took me literally 2 minutes to schedule it. I scheduled one for my daughter in an hour, the same day. Very
well,
easy.
there's Kroger and CVS and all those places near me. I just haven't
Yep.
taken the time. I'm going to get my booster.
Columbus
I just have
Public.
to
Yep.
sit down and,
I'll sign you up,
make.
Miss Ella. I got you. I'll sign you up. I'll call you.
Okay, sign me
I'm
up
See,
to
and,
do
and
that.
sincerely,
When you
for
call and
any of
tell
the
me where
listeners, honest to goodness, if you need some help getting signed up, I truly am more than willing to do that. I will tell you, I probably signed up, as I shared before, my family and probably almost 10 of our closer friends and family. I literally just went down the list and said, hey, are you ready? And they trust me enough that they sat on the phone with me for 2 minutes, and I just gave them, signed them up for appointments. So I'm more
well,
than
I
more
was
than
really,
willing and happy.
I really was kind of joking when I said, yes, sign me up. I can sign myself up.
don't
Because
delay.
me and my husband used to go at the same time and get our shots. So I'm gonna sign the both of us up to
Good.
go and get our booster, and I'm gonna do that tomorrow.
Yay.
So I can check that off my list for another thing that I need to
Yeah.
do. But I hope that I don't know. I hope that we have said something here tonight that will help someone decide, if they should get vaccinated or 5 to 11-year-old get vaccinated. Um, Bottom line also is that we have to keep on washing our hands, keeping our distance,
Absolutely.
wearing our masks. Now, I heard a guy say the other day, uh, somebody was questioning him about why he didn't have his mask on. He said, because the door says you should wear a mask, but nobody's enforcing that. They just put it on the door because the government told them they should put it on the sign on the door, but they don't say, excuse me, you don't have a mask on when you walk in there. But I wear my mask anytime I'm out and about and around people because I want
Hmm.
to see my grandson graduate from college.
Absolutely.
Wait
See,
a minute, I'm talking about my 6-year-old. I want to see him
Yeah,
graduate from college. Okay,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
um, I want to
Absolutely.
keep my
And there are some
everybody.
places where I will say I have witnessed some places that they do have the sign outside that say wear your mask. And I've actually seen a young lady follow a customer to it was a restaurant, and she was actually going to the patio. But I saw the young lady follow the customer to her seat with a mask and said, here, I need you to put this on. So I was really impressed with
Hmm.
that. I was
Hmm.
really impressed. So there are some people and some companies that really do take it seriously and want to protect,
Hmm.
because if you think about it, companies want to stay open. They want
Right,
business, and
right,
this is one way that will allow them to continue to stay open.
right. Okay, I just want one more minute. I want to remind. I see that Mike reminded everyone that they can still ask a question if they didn't participate in our table talk discussion. You can still ask a question, or make a statement, or do a testimony about why you got your COVID shot, and maybe that'll help
Hmm.
someone else. We're trying to encourage you. We're trying to do whatever we can to encourage folks to please go and get vaccinated to protect yourself um, and your family and those who are around you, so we can go to church, so we can fellowship, so we can just kind of
Mm-hmm.
enjoy being. Yeah. I know that I've seen that a lot of places have, like the other day, or that may have been the day before yesterday, they lit the tree in New York, the
Mm-hmm.
Christmas tree,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm. The
there was a
Rockefeller Center.
crowd. There was a crowd of people. Some had masks on, some didn't. And the morning show even commented on how people were elbow to elbow, leaning in, hugging. We want to do that, but we want to be safe doing that. Wear your mask or get
They're
vaccinated
sup-
and wear your mask.
they're
What you
supposed to do the Times Square ball drop this year, but with Omicron, that might be up in the air because they know that
Yeah.
several people in New York now have it. So that might change because of what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Last year you really couldn't get together with your family like you wanted to. So it's been a year
Mm-hmm.
vaccinated, but now they think, oh, that's great. We can get together and celebrate our Christmas with all of our friends and everybody else.
We're
Well, that is
surging right now.
I'm- that's great, but you got to put your mask on and
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep your distance. Um, it's kind of hard though
And I
when you
mean,
get.
you know what? Honestly, and yes, you do all those things, but it makes you feel a little bit better when you know that at least the people who enter into your home or into your circle are fully
That's
vaccinated and
right.
boosted up.
That's right.
Makes you feel a little bit better.
Right,
That's right.
right.
That's right.
Um, how do you explain at the football games where they rush the field but not getting
You
COVID?
don't
Yeah,
explain that.
no.
You don't. And if
You
you're
don't
at a
explain.
like a Ohio State, those football players had to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
90%, 90 some percent of OSU's faculty and 90 some percent of the students are vaccinated. And for
Yeah.
those students who didn't get vaccinated, they cannot take classes in person in January.
Yeah.
Mm,
And
okay.
and to date, if you are not vaccinated, even if you have a medical excuse, if you want to work between now and the end of the year, you have to be tested prior to your
Yes,
shift. You have to get
yes.
tested and prove negative, or you cannot. You cannot.
And that's
You
the
still have
other
to wear
thing
your
with
mask,
those,
but you have to be tested.
yeah, and with those teams, the football team, basketball teams, they're tested multiple times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Yeah.
don't get on the field unless they've been tested and cleared. And they have vaccine, and that's both vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't explain it. Um, we opened the country back up way too early last year. Any scientists will tell you that. But we're a capitalistic America, and we're about making that money at all costs. And I understand people have suffered, lost their jobs, but if you're dead, you can't work.
You can't work.
So what
You can't work.
what's the point? So my point is, yeah, that's me being a little sarcastic, but we're focusing on the wrong thing. Like Sister Forney and you said, Tamika, we want to get back to some normalcy. We want to be able to go to the theater and sit shoulder to shoulder with somebody. I mean, not necessarily, but be normal. Go to the OSU football game, which, yeah, and people still had it, but not think about
You're
being
right.
in that stadium with all those people, or being in the shot, or being at a concert, or being in church with the choir singing,
Mm-hmm.
or us not having to change the cover on every microphone in between people talking at church. But we have to use some common sense and prioritize. So I always tell
Absolutely.
people, well, the goal is to be alive. And then
Mm-hmm.
after
Right.
that, you put everything else, your work,
Mm-hmm.
your
Right.
recreation, and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that we've said something this evening that has changed someone's mind about getting the vaccination. We won't see you all again until after the holidays. So give yourself a Christmas present of life, and go and get your vaccination. And I'm going to go and get my booster. And we're going to meet back here in January 2022, all having been vaccinated. And then in June of 2022, Dr. Wise, never mind, I'm just talking. But anyway, everybody,
We'll have a smile party. Let's have a smile
Yes.
party so we can see everybody's
Right.
teeth.
right.
Yeah.
Everybody have
And get your flu
holiday.
shot.
Get your flu
Yes.
shot, get your vaccination, be safe, enjoy your holiday, wash your hands, wear your mask, do all those things. Merry Christmas.
Absolutely.
No, happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Happy
everybody.
Hanukkah.